Following the recent Israeli Defense Forces (IDF) airstrike in Yemen, which targeted Iran-backed Houthi rebel positions, tensions in the Middle East have escalated significantly. In a strongly worded statement, the Houthi leadership issued a dire warning to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, vowing a long war in retaliation for Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza and southern Lebanon. This threat underscores the growing complexity of the regional conflict, where actions by Israel and its allies, including strikes in Yemen, are triggering responses from various militant factions across the region, particularly those aligned with Iran. The Houthi rebels, officially known as Ansar Allah, have been a major player in Yemen's civil war since they took control of the capital, Sana'a, in 2014. While the Houthis have primarily been engaged in a bitter conflict with the Saudi-led coalition supporting Yemen's internationally recognized government, their allegiance to Iran has made them a significant part of the broader Middle Eastern power struggle between Iran and its regional adversaries. Iran's support for the Houthis has included military training, weapons supplies, and logistical support, positioning the group as a key proxy in Tehran's broader regional ambitions, particularly in terms of countering Saudi and Israeli influence. The Israeli airstrike on Yemen was reportedly in response to Houthi-backed missile and drone attacks targeting commercial vessels in the Red Sea, which are crucial to global trade routes. These attacks have been seen as part of the broader shadow war between Iran and Israel, in which both nations use proxy forces to exert influence across the region. This strike has prompted the Houthis to intensify their rhetoric, threatening that Israel's actions in Gaza and Lebanon, combined with the strike in Yemen, would not go unchallenged. In their statements, the Houthis warned Netanyahu that Israel's continued military actions against Palestinians in Gaza, coupled with its offensives in Lebanon against Hezbollah, would result in a broader regional conflict. The Houthis' pledge of a long war is a clear indication that they are willing to escalate their involvement in this multi-front conflict, potentially opening another front against Israel and its allies. Their threats come as Israel faces mounting pressure from various regional actors, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and now the Houthis in Yemen, all of whom are united by their opposition to Israeli policies in the region. The escalating rhetoric from the Houthis also signals the deepening involvement of Iranian-backed militias in the regional conflict. Iran has long been accused of using proxy forces to extend its influence and challenge the interests of its adversaries, particularly Israel and Saudi Arabia. While the Houthis have primarily focused on the war in Yemen, their alliance with Iran makes them a critical part of the broader Iranian strategy in the Middle East, which includes supporting groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Iran's commitment to these groups and its broader regional ambitions appear to be fueling an increasingly complex and volatile situation, with Israeli military action serving as a catalyst for further destabilization. Israel's offensive in Gaza has already drawn the attention and condemnation of numerous Arab and Muslim-majority countries, with many calling for a halt to the violence and an end to Israeli operations. The continued Israeli military actions, which have resulted in significant Palestinian casualties, have drawn parallels to Israel's previous conflicts in Gaza, where Palestinian militants, including Hamas, have launched rocket attacks into Israeli territory. The escalation in Gaza has sparked broader regional tensions, with Hezbollah in Lebanon becoming more active and launching rocket attacks into northern Israel, further complicating an already tense security situation. As Israeli military operations in Gaza and southern Lebanon continue, Israel is facing multiple threats from different groups operating on its borders. The Houthis' threats to Netanyahu indicate that Israel's actions are reverberating across the region, with Iran's proxies becoming more vocal and assertive in their opposition. The threat of a long war could potentially involve a range of asymmetric tactics, including missile and drone attacks, cyber warfare, and other forms of proxy combat, all designed to inflict damage on Israel while avoiding direct confrontation. The implications of this threat are far-reaching. A prolonged conflict involving the Houthis could stretch Israel's military resources even further, as it would require a strategic response not just on the borders with Gaza and Lebanon, but potentially in Yemen as well. Israel's security establishment would have to consider how to defend its maritime interests in the Red Sea, while also managing a conflict that could escalate on multiple fronts. Furthermore, the involvement of the Houthis could prompt greater Iranian involvement in the conflict, potentially leading to a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran or its proxies. In addition to the military implications, the political fallout from the Houthis' threat is significant. Israel's actions in Gaza, combined with the broader conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon, have already strained relations with many Arab nations. The involvement of the Houthis in the broader Middle Eastern conflict could further isolate Israel diplomatically, especially among countries sympathetic to the Palestinian cause and critical of Israel's military operations. This dynamic could reshape the region's alliances, as countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others who are aligned with Israel in their opposition to Iranian influence may find themselves caught in the middle of an escalating conflict with their own interests at stake. The escalation of violence and threats from Iran-backed groups such as the Houthis highlights the deepening sectarian and ideological divides within the Middle East. The broader Iranian strategy of using proxy forces to challenge Israeli and Western influence in the region appears to be gaining momentum, as these groups grow more vocal and active in their opposition. For Israel, the growing number of adversaries, combined with the increasing coordination between these groups, poses a serious challenge to its security and strategic objectives. The situation is further complicated by the global context, with the international community divided over how to address the ongoing conflict in Gaza and the broader Middle East. Calls for a ceasefire and a renewed focus on diplomacy have come from various quarters, but the threat of escalation from groups like the Houthis and Hezbollah suggests that peace remains elusive. As Israel contemplates its next steps, it must weigh its military objectives against the potential for a broader, more prolonged regional conflict, one that could involve not just Hamas and Hezbollah, but also other militant factions aligned with Iran, including the Houthis. In conclusion, the recent threats from the Iran-backed Houthis to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu represent a new chapter in the escalating tensions between Israel and its adversaries across the Middle East. With their vow of a long war in response to Israel's military actions in Gaza and Lebanon, the Houthis are signaling their readiness to escalate their involvement in the conflict. This development highlights the broader